Well, Nicky, we've got about 4 weeks to go until the Cheltenham Festival. Have the excitement, the nerves started to kick in yet?
Well, it does. I mean, we know it's getting closer, and 4 weeks is a long time in a horse's life. There's an awful lot of things that can go wrong, and I mean, that's the sort of worry of it. Every day there's a slippery banana somewhere that's going to trip you up, and you just, it's going to happen. I mean, somebody we just heard this morning that Allaho isn't going to make it, and it's going. There's so many things can go wrong. It's horrible.
With a horse like Constitution Hill, do you get more nervous with a horse like him, or would you know he's so good? Do you?
Well, you've got that little bit of extra pressure, possibly. Everybody's watching you.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty straightforward, to be fair, but it's not to say that things could go wrong, and we just got to hope for a clean journey. There's a lot of work to be done. You can't wrap them up in cotton wool and say, right, just relax, mate. They've got to work, and they've got to train, and they've got to train hard. It's like any athlete. And you put that sort of pressure on them, and things do go wrong.
When was the first time you looked at Constitution Hill and thought to yourself, we could have something a bit special here?
When I first looked at him, I thought it had bought a complete dud. Rang Barry Geraghty about 3 times. I said, I thought you told me this was a good horse, because we bought him off him, and he looked awful. He looked awful, and he looked slow. But then we found out a few things. We found out where the buttons were and pressed the right buttons. And when you do that, we found out that actually he was very, very good.
So he clearly took you by surprise a bit.
He did to start with.
Does his work at home now, was that of a champion hurdle horse?
Oh, yeah. No, he's brilliant. Yeah.
Timeform have him as your highest rated hurdler already. How do you think he'd get on against your previous champion hurdle winners?
Well, it's hard to say. He's only had 5 races in his life. That is the extraordinary thing about him, that he's got to this stage at such a young age, and with so little experience, if you like. But he's just very professional, and I think his greatest weapon is his head, that is just so solid. His mindset is great.
Normally with the horse, after just 5 runs, we'd be saying his best days are still ahead of him. Do you think there could be more to come from him still?
I don't know if he can improve, but maybe he doesn't have to, I don't know. But, he's going to get some opposition, there's no doubt about that. Willie's horse looked very good in Ireland in the Dublin race the other day, but, we've just got to do our own thing. You're not going to get a very big field. I think you're down to... It's about 14 at the moment. There's all that's left in there, and some of those might not run. So, I think the main thing with him is just keep it simple and hope hope everything just goes right. You need a lot of luck.
Dare we say it? Do you think he could be the best you've ever trained?
Who knows? He's a long way to go and do that. As I say, he's only had 5 runs. To be fair, what he's done in those 5 races is extraordinary. He does look, what he did in the Supreme last year was ridiculous. And then all he's doing so far this year is thrashing poor old Epitant, who then comes out and wins a Grade 2 last week, standing on her head. So it shows what he was beating each time.
Like I say, it's still so early in his career. If he goes and wins the champion hurdle this year, do you think he'll go back to defend his crown, or could we maybe see him over fences next season?
I don't know. That'll be something Michael and I will sit down over a glass of something through the summer, no doubt, and talk for hours and hours and hours until he could easily go chasing. Yeah.
One you do have over fences this year is Sporting Life Arkle Hope Jonbon. Obviously, he's a full brother to Douvan, and he came with that big price tag. Has there been a sense of pressure with him since day one?
There was to start with when I ran him in a bumper at Newbury in the spring of the year, and he came over. And yeah, there was pressure on him then because he was expensive. Thank goodness now, I think, everybody's forgotten what he cost. It doesn't make any difference. Yes, I know what he cost, but to be honest with you, if If he costs that, he's a very, very good horse. So he's actually probably good value. Because there's plenty of horses making that sort of money, but you don't always, then it's not in the public domain, do you know what I mean? So, we want to forget about, thank goodness they're now sort of, when they talk about him, they don't talk about what he cost. They're talking about what he's done, and he's done everything right.
He is very good, like you say. Did it surprise you what Constitution Hill did to him in the Supreme last year?
Yes, it did, very much so, because I think he's very good. And he'd done nothing wrong up until then. So, we've got to, see how we go. I think he'll probably get further in time, but we're, the Arkle's what we're after at the moment.
Now the dust settled a bit and you've had a few days to reflect on him, what did you make of Jonbon's run at Warwick at the weekend?
I think he was a bit rusty, and I think he had a really good blow after it, and no doubt the race will bring him on from a fitness point of view, and I think it'll probably just I think it'll give a little bit of a wake-up call. Just the other horse came and took him by surprise. It did, what happened? And all of a sudden he had to knuckle down, and he did, which was great. So, all things being equal, I'm going to look at it and take the positives out of it and say he'll have learnt from it.
In hindsight, do you think that could be a good thing in
I do.
The end? That he actually had a hard race rather than just jogging around?
Yeah.
The dangers in the Sport and Life Arkle, what have you made of the Irish Challenge and more specifically?
Well, you'd got to say, the horse of Simon Munir's and Willie Mullins's, La Fabriola. There was only a neck between them in the novice hurdle at Aintree last year. So he's the obvious one, but I think Dysart, Dynamo, that was a good race in Ireland. There's some good horses over here, but I think he'd probably be the best with the best of the English. But there's some pretty good Irish horses there, and they'd probably come out of that race in Dublin. You've
got a really good record in the Sport and Life Arkle, and you've won it with some really good ones in the past. What sort of horse do you need to win an Arkle?
A fast one. That can jump.
Is Jonbon up there with your previous?
Hey, listen, when you're playing with Sprinter Sacras and Altios, it wasn't very difficult. I don't think it's going to be that easy this year.
It was great to see Shishkin this morning looking so well. How's he been since his, was it an operation on his back he had?
We were doing his palate.
How's he been since?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's difficult to tell at home whether it's made any difference. But, if it was interfering with him, which we think it was, then you're entitled to think it'll improve him.
And you've seen signs at home now that the old Shishkin's still there?
He's never been a brilliant horse at home. He's been schooling very well. Nico rode him work on Saturday, and he was very happy with him.
Ready to go to Ascot at the weekend?
I'd like to go to Ascot at the weekend and try him over 2.5. If I find out he doesn't get it, I'm in a terrible muddle. Because I'll have to supplement him back into the champion chase. I don't really want to do that.
After watching the Clarence House chase and the action in Ireland as well, have you got any regret about not putting him in the champion chase?
Well, I probably should have done, but I mean, you try to be reasonably economical with your owner's money. And I put him in 2 races and didn't put him in the champion. I mean, intentionally I didn't put him in the champion. I'd made my mind up. He wasn't a 2-miler. Maybe having done his wind and finding he doesn't stay 2.5 at Ascot, I'd made the wrong decision. I mean, we could always put him back in. It's quite expensive. You've got to be very confident about it to do it.
What initially had made you think he wants to step up in trip?
Because if you go back to the race with Energinine in the Clarence House last year, and you look at the Tingle Creek this year, both times he's actually in top gear the whole way. Mm-hmm. They're actually taking him off his feet. He can't go fast enough. He couldn't, going to the second last in the Clarence House last year, he wasn't going to get anywhere near Energinine. But in fact, they'd gone very quick. They'd gone too quick for him. And he was flat out. And he was flat out in the Tingle Creek. I don't like to see horses racing, that far out of, in that, out of their comfort zone, to be honest with you. It'd be much easier for him to, over 2.5, he's going to half a stride slower, he's going to be on the bridle, he's going to find it so much easier.
The races he is in at Cheltenham, the Ryanair and the Gold Cup, which one's most likely?
Ryanair.
Any temptation to go for gold? Go for the big one?
I don't think so, because I mean, I'd be very surprised.
You've got Bold Endeavour in at Ascot the weekend as well. Is he an intended runner?
Yeah, I would think he'd get a run in the Reynoldsdown. I'm going to try him over 3 miles because I think it'll suit him. He's been impressive. He'd like the ground. He'll be in a handicap anyway.
And you've got a really strong team of mares this year. Did Theatre Glory throw a hat into the mares hurdle ring at Warwick on Saturday?
Yes, you could easily. We'd have to supplement her, but we might easily do that. I mean, if Epatante goes into the mares, she's got to be supplemented as well. But that's not a problem, to be honest with you. She might run in the Champion, she might run in the mares. We'll see, because Marie's Rock, who won that mares race last year, the alternative is to move her up from the 2.5 to 3 and run the other two in the 2.5. But we'll see which way we play them around. We can juggle this until the last minute, to be fair. We'll see which way JP wants to go with Epatante first.
And another really exciting mare is Luccia, who won yesterday at Exeter. She's in the mare's novice. Is that her most likely one?
I would have said so. I mean, she is in the Supreme as well. I would have thought. I think Nico's thinking that because we have got a horse with no name in the novice as well. She was second in it last year. So she's, she'd have a very good chance. But, you've got to run 2 in these races if you've got to. This is where it really counts. Nico's probably trying to move Luccia over so he can ride 2.
Do you think she's good enough for a Supreme?
I think she probably is, but I'd rather take the easier route.
And Mr. Coffey, he ran really well again in defeat. Is it fair to say he's had a frustrating season so far?
He has a bit because the weather's been frustrating. He wants soft ground. He has to go left-handed. He stays, and so it's been a really difficult winter for him. But he ran a good race. I think he's a moral winner in my opinion the other day, and I think he's got a very good chance.
And First Street in the Kingwell at Wincanton this weekend?
Yeah, he runs in the Kingwell, yes, the weekend. It'll be interesting to see what's in that. And then we'll decide where we go. I mean, to be fair, he was second in the county last year. But since when? I mean, the alternative would have been to run him in the Betfair hurdle last weekend with 12 stone. And that didn't sound like a very good idea. I'm much happier with him in the Kingwell. But then, he's likely to have 12 stone in the county, so I suppose he could easily come into the Champion hurdle.
That's great to hear. Thanks for your time, Nicky.
Not at all. Pleasure.